Very rarely does a game manage to feel simply surreal. Very rarely is a game so unique and creative that it makes me actually wonder, how can this exist? Very rarely is a game so hilarious that I laugh out loud hundreds of times throughout the whole experience, and very rarely is a game quite as beautiful as Disco Elysium. And I'm actually not over-exaggerating. I became obsessed with this game the first time I played it back in 2019, today with the final cut, and probably will once again a few years down the line after I get nostalgic for it. So I thought I'd write this in-depth, though not complete, commentary on the game, instead of keeping all my observations and opinions to myself. Disco Elysium is an incredibly ambitious indie role-playing game. It's published by Zaum and is surprisingly not only their first published game, but their first attempt at making a video game ever. When it comes to the epitome of role-playing, having tons of choices and being able to play any type of character you want, Disco Elysium is definitely one of the best I've ever seen. I haven't played Planescape Torment, mind you, but I'll make sure to correct myself if I change my mind when I try it, and likely make a review on that as well. Concerning Disco Elysium, just think about the following for a second. The entire script has about 1 million words, probably a little over that. If you read non-stop at a pace of 200 words a minute, it'll take 83 hours and 20 minutes. My Final Cut playthrough took 44 hours, and the voice actors don't even come close to reading that fast. It's no more than 150 words, and it's not just dialogue 24/7 too. You still take your time to choose dialogue options and run around and stuff. My point is, there's a hell of a lot of new content to be seen in each playthrough depending on the type of character you're playing. Also the choices which you make, of which there are so many, when it comes to what you say in casual dialogue, what you do in action, and what you ultimately decide in serious situations. And so many detrimental dice rolls to make the choices for you. There are the more prevalent white checks, which if you failed you can retry by raising the required skill, or sometimes when gaining some detrimental information related to the check. All of them are influenced by the levels of your various skills. There are 24 of them and you can choose any to be your signature one. The skills constantly talk to you and urge you on to do different things, and having them be a signature raises the maximum points you can put into the ones in the category by 1, and also increases the skill itself by 1. Which means more dialogue. At least that's what I assume. There must be some exclusive dialogue for those with the max points, but I'm not sure. It might simply improve your rolls alone, I hope not. But at the end of the day, you only have so many points to spend on maxing skills. You have to unlock thought cabinet slots and raid some skills you might not want so you can retry white checks. There's honestly so much to think about in order to determine how much content there is, but trust me, you can replay this game a lot and keep seeing new stuff. But what's so great about the rolls is that failure isn't bad. In most role-playing games, fighting will be the challenge, and if you lose, you often get sent back to try again until you succeed. With the white checks in Disco Elysium, your failure is canon to the story. Although you can come back later, characters will sometimes react to your first attempts in some way, and you have to admit that the failures are always hilarious. I'm even happy about it sometimes. Now, there are white checks that seem like they're the only way to achieve an outcome. For example, passing the Shivers check for the dice maker is likely the only way to discuss the curse further, but not all of them are like that. If you fail to knock out Measurehead, you don't have to try again, you can instead sneak in by using Kuno's Pick Head Place or whatever the hell it is, or by subscribing to John Luke's Race Beliefs. And when it comes to red checks, excluding one that I'll speak about later, both outcomes are always great in their own way. Protecting Kim will allow you to experience the last part of the game with him, but failing to do so and thus going with Kuno instead is just as good. Or something minor like the Karaoke Scene. The ancient reptilian brain version appeals to Garth, which feels almost surreal, yet Kim actually prefers the terrible limbic system one. But I still have some criticism about the checks that I'd like to levy. First of all, I would have appreciated it if all the checks were set in stone, so to speak. As in, if you level authority and have a white check to retry, the game updates the result internally and waits for you to take it. And no matter how many times you reload, you always get, say, a 5 and a 4 or whatever. This actually has nothing to do with save scumming, but rather the fact that I won a 17% roll and died immediately after, and then had to retry like 20 times to get it again. Literally, and I can't just leave it be, you know, you kinda have to do it. It's canon to your personal story now. And when it does come to save scumming, that being reloading the save in order to get the roll you want, I just say let them choose the outcomes of their roles, since that's essentially what you're doing. It would be labeled enable cheats of course next to the hardcore mode in the menu, so as to disincentivize you from doing it, since it isn't really the intended experience in my opinion. You're supposed to choose which parts of the game you want to explore, since you can't have maximum points into each skill. It only makes sense that my intellect and psyche based character can't knock out Measurehead and be adept at interfacing, and the giant drug addict or rather enthusiast, and so on. To clarify, that's just for the first playthrough. If you're on your second one and fail to protect him again and you really want to see the last chapter of the game with him like I did, then reload, of course. Even with white checks, if you haven't seen the Measurehead knockout or done the clean and jerk, then by all means do the same. Another weird thing I noticed was that the morale and health damage seems to tick before the outcome of the check is actually revealed on the right, and that clearly spoils it. I remember some failed checks that do heal your morale, but most of the time if you're taking damage it means you failed. And my biggest complaint, the map is incredibly buggy. Red checks don't appear on the right, like at all. This might be a feature, but that'd be even worse. Why would you want me to take the chance now lest I forget about it? But whatever. More importantly, white checks don't appear whenever they aren't available. Not when they're completed, but rather something like buying the Cockatoo-Buku Revachol map and still having it say that the check for stealing them is available. It's so dumb to have to scan through all the available ones and try to work out which are actually real. As you can see, I intentionally put 1 point in the volition for the check of looking classier in the eyes, and yet it's not even there. But more about the skills themselves, every single one is a different trait that will shape your experience. Want to be the weirdo that brings up random facts? Encyclopedia. Use your position as a policeman to intimidate everyone? Authority. Have worryingly high knowledge of narcotics and be constantly persuaded into taking them? Electrochemistry. Literally get side stories about what other policemen are doing at the time being, like some sort of cop hive mind, mostly when they're similar to your current endeavors? Esprit de corps. Be able to tune into the city and speak with Revachol herself? Shivers. Have rigorous political discord and understand the debate tactics people use, then take them down with your giant communism, among other options of course, but mostly pertaining to communism? Rhetoric. I can go on forever about all of these skills. They're such an interesting thought simulator. Oh, you know what that drug does, you've done it before, and you read about this before, you have so much knowledge, share with them now, you can't keep it to yourself, what's the point then? You get it, it's an actually groundbreaking mechanic in my opinion, and I wish that at least some developers just shamelessly copy it in the future. I also love that they are by no means all objective, since, well, they literally contradict each other all the time. Going back to the choices part of roleplaying, Disco Elysium is one of the only roleplaying games ever that lets you be a giant asshole in almost every single situation ever. A lot of games let you act insane, yet when push comes to shove in serious situations, most of your choices are rather rational. Well, definitely not here. You can almost always be a jerk intentionally, if not just be stupid. A woman is painstakingly explaining to you how you were the worst guest ever because you literally took out your gun and pointed it around, threatening to kill yourself, destroyed the toilet and kitchen, threw a stuffed bird against the wall, and so on. Well, you can own up to your actions or tell her she's, and I quote, the worst tavern wench I've ever seen. It isn't even the last dialogue option. The game constantly kept one-upping itself when it came to making me say there is literally no chance this conversation going this bad is part of the script, and it always was. And I never found myself wondering why can't I be an asshole here, not because there aren't instances where you couldn't be, there was, it doesn't let you be a jerk 100% of the time, I just know that no other game would let you be mean in the other situations either, so yeah. A lot of games also have that characters remembering how you treat them feature, as in they forget in 5 minutes and most often go back to their default greetings traveler opener, no matter what you said to them. In Disco Elysium it almost always felt like the characters were treating me how I expected to be treated. Guard seems a little annoyed, though holds back a little more if I also do so on all the dialogue options, but if I continue being an asshole or even indifferent, he goes on to be rightfully passive aggressive till the end of the game. At least that's the impression I walked away with. Although there was one exception, and it's with Guard towards the end of the game. He isn't angry at you anymore, like at all. It doesn't really matter why, all you need to know is that you're able to click the old dialogue options and have him still be super aggressive. Even options you might reasonably click on, like the one for your build tonight, and it was very immersion breaking for me. I guess Guard did not remember this like Clementine did. If you say that it doesn't matter because they shouldn't have to rewrite the whole conversation in case a player saved it for later, well, I disagree. That's a bad slippery slope into justifying not fleshing out the characters remembering stuff part, I feel, and it doesn't seem like that's what Disco Elysium is going for. This is the only time I can recall this happening in the game though, so I guess it's alright in that way. Continuing, getting in the shoes of Harry is some of the most I've ever lived through someone in a game. Almost every single thing I did made me exceptionally paranoid about whether I'd humiliated myself or not. Disappointing the lieutenant genuinely hurt, if only a little. And it does it so fast too. Literally the first conversation you have in the game is with Classier, where you likely failed a suggestion check in under the words, "I want to have fuck with you." I was both laughing manically and panicking about what I just said. I'm actually struggling to click continue. I don't want to be in this situation. It's the first 10 minutes of the game, yet I'm already so invested. Then we have playing the cop. I can't emphasize enough just how much every single objective feels like a police side case, mostly because Harry is investigating the world around him due to his amnesia. It's great, and the actual police business always got so real. And the visuals in this game are pretty realistic, yet slightly stylized. It very much reminds me of Dishonored, which has one of my favorite art styles ever. One weird decision that I can't quite understand is that the model sometimes doesn't look like the character's portrait, like, at all. Not just minor details, but things like hair color. Joyce's portrait shows her as an oldish lady with graying hair, for example, but the model portrays her as one with brown. Lena is much the same, though it's an even bigger age gap. And Gary is the opposite, the model is grey haired, yet the portrait has brown hair. I can perhaps see this as being an artistic choice. The portraits are how the characters see themselves, you know, not how they really are. That would be a stretch though, since I've never seen anything in the game, or anyone out of it for that matter, suggesting so, but there has to be some kind of reason. They obviously didn't do it just like that, so please tell me in the comments if you've perhaps watched an interview that explains it, or simply have a theory or something. Otherwise, the pre-rendered graphics are obviously greatly detailed and very beautiful. The Final Cut also optimized the game a lot, it's able to run on a 10-year-old laptop now. A little more about the gameplay, all of this beautiful writing is in the bottom right? What? Most games will opt for the bottom middle, but Disco Elysium's text box is frankly my favorite ever. The line length is perfect, and the text box itself takes up a very big part of your monitor. It's super cozy in a weird claustrophobic reading an ebook under the sheets kind of way. It feels more natural too, since it's closer to your right arm, if that makes any sense. It also mirrors social media scrolling on a phone, which, along with the former, were the developers' reasons for using the design. Obviously, you also get XP and intriguing skill checks, let alone the intrinsic satisfaction of clearing up the dialogue options. Not to say that you should clear all of them out, no, not if you wish to roleplay anyway. Just do the ones you think your character will actually say. The inventory scouring, on the other hand, was annoying as hell. In the later stages of the game, you have like 30 different clothes and have to scan through all of them to find the ones that give you electrochemistry or authority. Having an option to choose a specific skill and have the game automatically outfit you to max it would have been amazing. Then maybe being able to create an outfit you can instantly equip so you can go back to your default. I imagine that wouldn't be too hard. Besides, you can't even sort the clothes by type, and that's just terrible. I can't for the life of me figure out what's a shirt and what's a jacket half the time. Going into the bugs, the one I was the most confused about when I first encountered it was not being able to take drugs. I would put them in my left or right hand slot and they just couldn't be used. I eventually tried switching my other slot and that actually fixed it every single time, which is quite easy, but still, this is a really terrible bug to have, since some players might understandably go, oh, I guess I'm not supposed to be able to take drugs as often, or I can only do it once or something. Oh, and going to the options and back a couple of times rarely works too. This is the only bug I remember encountering outside of the church. There is, very well fittingly, something wrong with this Church of Dolores Day. First of all, I couldn't talk to the crabman Tiago even after reloading multiple times. It eventually went away after trying more and more, but it's again one of the worst bugs to have, since it kind of does look like you shouldn't be able to talk to him. I mean, he's all the way up there. Next, the pale sound reveal was bugged. When you finally listen to it on the speakers, the camera slowly zooms out to the creepy sounds, and at some point the continue button is supposed to appear, but it didn't. And for the third time, horrible bug to have. You eventually realize that something is wrong, but for a good while I was saying, okay, I'll wait a little more, or maybe I'm supposed to click here on the light. From what I understand, it happens when you have environmental effects on high, and switching it to low immediately fixed it for me. If it wasn't for that holy Reddit thread though, that could have been a game breaker. You can't complete the quest otherwise. And before finding that fix, as I was reloading desperately and trying to make it work, I came across another bug. The camera slowly zooming out with the game refusing to let you move until it's done, after each and every conversation. I logged in and out a couple of times and that went away too. Finally, we have a cat standing a little too far from the desk and thus you're not able to talk to him. I didn't actually have anything left to talk to him about at that time, so I never bothered to find a fix. These were in fact very frustrating bugs, and it really soured my experience a bunch at the time it was happening. But outside of the church, the game is polished, although I've always felt like something was off about the movement. There must be. Continuing, all the characters in this game are also voiced. Not the dialogue tags, but going in and out of different voices wouldn't have been great, I think. Otherwise, all of it is voiced. It's over 1 million words, as I said, in a free update, and this is so much more than a quality of life feature. First of all, this is obviously in no way a drawback for everyone, as you can toggle between full voice, no voice and the classic 2019 partially voiced version. And for others, it's a complete game changer. There's a reason why audiobooks have gotten so popular. It's also amazing for streamers and YouTubers. Some have played through the entire game, reading every single line out loud for their audience, but not everyone has the resilience to do that. And playing the game otherwise is not the most watchable experience in the world. And it is now, not to mention there's a streaming mode where the chat can vote on what to happen, and that, as long as you have an active community, turns the game from simply watchable into top tier content. If Harry screws up, it's not the streamer that screwed up, but rather we all screwed up. It's way more engaging. Now, there are some new voices and we obviously can't know why Zaum chose some of them over the old ones, but I'll comment if we do. I also might have missed some changes, so bear that in mind. This is going to be an in-depth look into everything about the characters, mind you. Their voices are just one aspect of it, but I'll still talk about it a lot since we do have so much dialogue after all. If I don't speak about the character, it's because I have nothing to say about them. Firstly, we have Harry Dubois, our protagonist, who isn't voiced. What he is able to be shaped in many various ways, yet still not be a blank slate character at all. At the end of the day, he's still Harry. Basically, there wasn't a single dialogue option or decision that I couldn't see him going for. Had my Harry taken all the drugs he did a couple of hours later the previous day and still been high, he probably would have wanted to shoot Kono's way more. He probably would have punched Kono as well, who knows. I can see him continuing to do drugs or deciding to stop. I can see him being a fascist or a communist. I can see him being a good guy, an asshole, or a complete disaster of who the hell even knows what his intentions are anymore. He's an incredibly versatile vessel for you while still remaining an actual character. This is perhaps because of the whole amnesia thing. All the aspects of your being have been long forgotten, political affiliations and such, yet the nature of your character remains undisputed. You screw up. A lot. Even if you try your hardest, you'll be able to mitigate it, yet never truly eliminate it. At least for the time being, you're getting there. What I love the most about him is that he is realistic. He isn't the chosen one or even the underdog for that matter. Not to say that these two approaches are bad, but Zaum's approach simply creates such a relatable character. It's so much easier to see yourself not being able to catch some keys that get tossed towards you, or asking someone out, or whatever awkward everyday situation really, than some wholly unlikely for you scenario. Harry's story still has those and some others that are obviously impossible, but they're not what dominates the game. Then comes our partner, Kim. His stone-faced self works so well with Harry's ridiculous dialogue options. I never wanted to disappoint Kim, but I also wanted to have some fun. That first part in particular is just so in there. There's one moment in the game where you can make Kim pretty angry. I'll speak about it later, but I'm very glad I didn't get to experience it firsthand before seeing it on YouTube. I'm positive it would have been some of the worst I'd ever felt about doing something in a game. Secondly, Kim's seriousness just makes the times where he does go off or ever simply show some emotion so special. I'm also glad they didn't change his voice, as it was naturally the one I'd gotten the most attached to. I think it's easy to say that Kim is one of the best companions in any game ever. Garth is, despite what I remembered from playing the game 2 years ago, not a very major character. He is however still memorable, being the one that annoyed you 24/7, rightfully so. I actually didn't notice his voice having been changed, and that's because it wasn't. It's just vastly different delivery, and I prefer it a lot more. The old guard sounds like a snobby, uninterested, I manage ex-cafeterias kinda guy. And the new one is more of a did you seriously just ask me that, constantly annoyed because I manage ex-cafeterias kinda guy. The old one's slow, depressed speech pattern wasn't bad by any means, and he still has that to a degree, but not to the same level. And also a hilarious hate for anything unnecessary that's coming out of Harry's mouth. And in true Harry fashion, you can't talk to him about so many things that he clearly has zero interest in. The new one is simply a less blunt performance, so if anything I prefer it because of that. Next are Kunu and Kunos, if that's how you pronounce that, who are easily some of the most shocking characters I've seen in a while. Rarely will a game have two 12-year-old kids constantly calling you a pig, screaming the F word 50 times, throwing rocks at a hanging corpse, saying they're gonna kill you, pulling a little prank on you wherein they scream rape whenever you try to question them, keep making other extremely uncomfortable sexual remarks, and most importantly, let you punch one of them and literally shoot the other for all of it. And while that is extremely memorable, the first thing that he used to stand out when it came to Kuno was his voice. He had but a few voice lines, yet they were the type that you'd find yourself reciting whilst in the shower. That's how much they stuck with you.
Get the f*** out of here, face! You got something? Talk to me! No, get your ass handed to you by the Kuno! Can't talk, pig! She's coming up strong! Throwing rocks! Don't be traumatising her! Get the f*** out of here! What's going on there? F*** are you trying to pull, pig?
And that's why the fact that they changed it was so disappointing. He doesn't sound like a drugged out fiend, he sounds like a vulgar, but definitely not that mean of a kid, just stupid.
The fuck are you calling a third person? Kuno's the fucking first person?
You could argue that Kuno is a good kid who's just poor, has a horrible father and got involved with drugs, and that's why his more toned down voice might be better. He also sounds higher in a different way, perhaps. He's very giggly, constantly sounds like he's smiling. The old Kuno was very aggressive, which might still be taken as him coming down, as it's supposed to cause irritability with amphetamines, from what I understand at least. However, as he puts it, shit's coming up strong, Kuno's riding the lightning and such. It definitely doesn't sound like he's coming down, so the new voice might make more sense, but then again I don't understand the effects of speed even little from just reading about it. And I still love the old one 10 times more, and I don't even hate this voice either, to be honest. It's good, but I don't hate Kuno. The voice isn't even remotely condescending or irritable most of the time, I can just kind of ignore him. It's not that I don't want to punch him because he's a child, much like before, but rather I don't want to punch him. The old recording was kind of low quality, sure, but that's as far as it goes. Otherwise, this is a colossal downgrade to one of the most memorable characters in the entire game. And they apparently did it because the old one was unpopular with the majority of the audience? Really? I'm incredibly disappointed that they caved in and actually changed it, not just because it's kind of a disrespect to Dot Major, the original voice actor, but also to themselves. Zaum and Dot worked together for this incredibly well-made annoying character, and yet they changed him because he was annoying. It's a tale as old as time, people not being able to separate the character's quality and their hate for the character as a person. Skylar for Breaking Bad, Joffrey, Cersei and many others from Game of Thrones, the newly joined Gabby from Attack on Titan, the list goes on. Anyone would hate them in real life, but does that mean they are badly written? No, of course not, it's the complete opposite. Some might make the argument that Zaum, being a smaller studio, are simply looking out for their sales and putting that over the artistic intent. Even if I thought that was okay, would many people give a negative review because of Kuno's annoying voice? Or maybe even refund the game since you see him in the first couple of hours? No, probably not. But that doesn't matter because I obviously don't think that's okay at all. It would be a slippery slope into justifying the change of so much other stuff in order to make the game more marketable, especially in such a politically charged game. And if they did do it because of the artistic intent, then it's simply a downgrade in my opinion. The final argument is that some might say it's better suited for a fully voiced version, since Kuno kind of evolves into a more normal kid as the story progresses. Would the cracked out version work for that? Yes, it would, since he changes much the same in the original. The one on the island still sounded annoying, but not as crazy since he was off the speed. And the voice actor has an unbelievable range. He also voiced Gene Wickmeyer? Whatever, in the original. That's a complete 180, so I really think he could have pulled it off. Oh, and Kunoes's is great actually, so I'm glad they didn't change her. Realizing that her and Dolores Day in the dream share the same voice actor was a traumatic moment that's kept me up for many nights, so now I gotta put you up to it too. Enjoy. Then we have Classier, who had one of the best improvements out of all when it comes to her voice. I know she is kind of supposed to be dead inside, but I think the old one was an overkill. It's not that bad. The new captures it just subtly enough, whilst also expressing the sense of humor and carelessness for the world she clearly has. When it comes to her character, I love that they went all out with making her the perfect liar. She's a corporate spy trained in espionage and subterfuge after all. It's almost impossible to detect when she's being honest and when she isn't. If you haven't yet realized that you probably won't be able to read everyone in the real world, then I hope this game hammers it in. She also hammers in how the skills are not all-knowing and 100% objective, which is great. Next is Joyce Messier, who's one of my favorites for sure. I'm relieved they didn't change her voice actor, since he's perfectly suited, and just redid the existing lines and added the new ones instead, as far as I can tell anyway. The tone of her voice, her giant boat, the crashing waves in the background, the beautiful music, it's all so grand, so fitting for speaking to one of the few reasonable people in Rebasho, since she's not from Rebasho. She's also a treasure trove for our amnesiac detective, willing to educate him on anything from the current political climate to the entire basis of reality itself. And yeah, Joyce turns out to be just as not nice as everyone else. When she finds out you don't have your badge, she latches onto that and basically uses it so you can run her errands, even though she has nothing to do all day, since Everard is refusing to talk to her. And she literally admits to prioritizing her reputation with her employer over the peace in Martinez. Everard is also an interesting character. He's a parallel to Joyce, but not how you might expect. In a way, he's a better person at heart. He seems to really care about, not Rebasho, but definitely Martinez. I mean, he provides a pose that isn't needed in the slightest, that of the security guard, to Rene, even though he has no other reason to care about him other than the fact that he's a Martinez citizen. And he appears to think that the construction plan will actually help the villagers. Now, that obviously wouldn't make much a difference if it doesn't help them, but we're talking about his intentions here. Yet he does also, much like Joyce, refuse to cooperate with us and officer the law until we help him. He doesn't help us with our gun, and Everard knows that it's in the hands of an insane grandma and that she could shoot herself with it or someone else any day now. He indirectly bribes you as well. Oh, and he also makes us sit in that damn chair. When it comes to his voice, the actor was kept as far as I can tell, but the performance is different, with a higher pitch. It's not a big change, so I didn't even notice it at first, but it's definitely not a downgrade. Bird's Nest Roy is weirdly one of my favorite characters in the whole game, and his pawn shop is one of my favorite places to be in the game. Anytime I have to sell something, I end up sitting there for like 5 minutes. The atmosphere is insane, with Roy's ominous fading in and out music over the constant calming white noise, the odd antiques lying everywhere, and the soothing, warm, hypnotic, I can go on for hours lights, since the amazing description, the atmosphere makes me feel as if I'm there the moment I think about the place, no matter where I am. Yeah, I really like this place that much. And his voice is completely perfect. I know I use that word sparingly sometimes, but I really mean it here. I can't even begin to imagine how you could possibly make this voice better.
I've had to take it, you know, since the People's Pile cleanup. I was with the Emergency Relief Brigade.
I wish there was something more to the pawn shop so I could spend more time here. Hearing about the People's Pile disaster and getting the Parolidon afterwards is great though. The racist lorry driver was a nice touch too, not so much an interesting character since he's pretty much your average racist uncle, but rather a provocateur that gives us some insight into what happens when Kim gets agitated. Oh, and I guess he's the point in which you can decide whether you want to be anti-racist or ridiculously centrist. They kept the same voice actor but redid the lines, I think, and that's great since I love his heavy accent. But who cares about the average racist when we have Measurehead, our friendly neighborhood phrenologist and not casual, professional racist. He isn't really the same as the lorry driver, not so much your racist uncle, but rather the scientific racist your uncle watches on YouTube, the Stefan Molyneux type. And no matter how articulate he or his theories are, he's still kind of the embodiment of a debate bro. He doesn't even try to convince you of anything, he just makes you angry with his cleverly disguised personal jabs, thus making you look like a lunatic whilst he sits there calmly, making you look like you lost the debate basically. My favorite thing about this clearly racist individual, however, is that he is a black supremacist. Not to say that any real-life white supremacist would see what it is and say, you know what, I don't want to be a racist anymore. However, I am amused by the idea that there might be someone like that on the receiving end of it. His name is also hilarious, Measurehead, because of the phrenology. A minor character I liked is Easy Leo. I know his unintentional yet constant derailing is supposed to be an obstacle, but I just love his voice and easygoing demeanor so much. I found myself wanting to listen to all of his stories even though I could avoid it. Okay Leo, fine, let's hear about this fight you got into. And next, I ask you all to pay your respects to our man Gene Wickmeyer, who's unfortunately no longer in the game. I'm just kidding, he is, but I like to pretend he isn't because they completely massacred my boy's voice.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm going by here.
Seeing how amazing the casting has been so far, or at least good enough in some cases, I was incredibly let down on the morning of day 3 when I walked into the cafeteria. I mean, just why? His constantly pissed off attitude and thick French accent made him into the perfect over-the-top asshole, completely justified in his anger, yet taking it a bit too far at times.
You look like shit. And I don't mean that as a metaphor.
This one change made me realize just how much a voice can go into shaping a character. The new one makes him into a little bit angry but mostly reasonable, maybe even too lenient angel of a cop compared to the old one. If I'd met him like this at first, I would have thought he was the most unnecessary bland character in the whole damn game. And after hearing you look like shit, I would have expected him to clasp my hand Arnold style, or start laughing suddenly Robert Baratheon style. It felt like he could do it at any moment actually, he sounds like fucking Trent Hiddleston the guy. I honestly think this kind of ruined the final scene for me, not gonna lie, but we'll get there. What's the saddest thing is that it's once again a downgrade from Dot Major's performance, like I said, he also voiced this character. On a lighter note, Silang was a huge improvement, he sounds way more enthusiastic now as his lines indicate he should. And we found our third lucky racist, Gary the Cryptofascist, one of the best names and jokes in the game. You see, he's right next to Morel the Cryptozoologist, and he also conceals his true beliefs. Think of him as the Nick Fuentes type. With him we complete our trio of racist types. He is most notably a great example of the quality of the game's quest design and how well connected they all are with each other. Gary is the guy whose door you need to open for Everard so you can get more info. And also the guy who's with Morel, the cryptozoologist you had to find, and the guy who threw the hangman's clothes in the trash too, so now you know that, and he's wearing a part of the ceramic armor, the one you need to collect all of. This also shows how pretty much forgotten quests come up later in the game. You find the trash bin in the first 2 hours of the game, but meet Gary 25 hours later. Another example would be Forter's accident. You thought you'd never guess the password to the radio computer because you don't have enough perception to see a post-it note in the darkness or something. But then you meet the lead programmer Sona a dozen or more hours later, and she's related to a completely different quest, the Speed Freaks' Disco, but she still sends you back to the abandoned studio one last time. And back to Gary, keeping the old voice was the right call. Another minor character, the smoker on the balcony, his voice is amazing.
Is it really that important? Alright, but make it quick. Once I finish this cigarette, I have to run.
And it's way better suited than the old one. He used to not sound as if he was whispering at all. It's straight up some Dumbledore-asked calmly type stuff.
Not looking for any trouble, officer.
I love how Harry couldn't quite figure out what was different about this gentleman due to his amnesia, and literally dedicating one of his 8-hour mind projects to figure it out. Oh, and also how Kim couldn't hide his amusement for your obliviousness. You then ask Kim if he's part of the homosexual underground after figuring out the thought, and it leads to a short but hilarious conversation about how you're obsessing over other people's sexuality now instead of your own. Continuing, my favorite non-name name in the game, Idiot Doomspiral. First off, his voice is an improvement. He is now very well spoken and convincing for a drunk.
Good to see you. How's business? How's the whole reality situation treating you?
Don't get me wrong, I love the old UK accent, trust me.
Good to see ya. How's business? How's the old reality situation treating ya?
I definitely want another character with the same voice actor, one that's more suited for it. I just really like the voice. But I think the Final Cut one fits Doom Spiral way better, especially with the new ultra liberal quest where he's trying to scam you. I can see it being very easy to fall for this guy's shit in real life. He's so perfectly manipulative. I can't tell if he's trying to screw me over or really believes in himself, or if the story about his name is even real for that matter. It just works. I don't know about you, but I know I would have trusted the new guy way more than the old one. Getting into the non-human characters, you know they went all out with the voice acting when your freaking Ty is also voiced. I'll be honest, my Inland Empire wasn't that high for the first part of the game, so I can't know how much I heard of it, but from what I did, the voice was hilarious. It just seems like electrochemistry to me, but wow there, it's still funny though. Then comes the ancient reptilian brain, who's done right one of the best vocal performances I've ever heard. It's easy to see why this voice actor also happens to be the voice director. The constant elevation of his voice and just how much emphasis he can put on certain words while still keeping the constantly grindy, raspy voice is insane. I'm so glad they kept most of the original lines because they're nothing short of perfect, and the only ones they didn't, they redid because of the actual script itself getting changed. It just fits so well with the soundtrack that often plays behind it. And so does the limbic system, which was done by the same guy. They redid almost all of the lines in the Final Cut, as far as I could tell. They added a certain voice cracking to the performance. I can't really explain it better, so I'll just show an example.
There's something wrong with your thoughts. Some kind of new type of hangover.
There, specifically with wrong and thoughts. Either way, I love it. It's simply a better performance too. There are exceptions, but they're very few. This new one also sounds perhaps more euphoric, more as if it's talking to itself rather than you as well, sometimes anyway. That's good since it does come off as the type that interjects with, at times, not so important matters during the reptilian brain speeches. And finally we have the narrator. This is obviously the biggest change in the Final Cut. We used to not have one at all, but now the skills and your thoughts are all voiced, and by just one guy who isn't even a voice actor but a musician. Yet I don't think there are many who could have done it better. Some people say he sounds like an artificially generated voice, but that's actually why I like it. I think if you're gonna listen to these non-dialogue lines for a big part of the game, they should probably be as monotone as possible. Very consistent, hard to get tired of, very easy on the ears, yet still incredibly satisfying with the deep narration.
Thick polymer socks, probably for padding. A fine array of interlocking plates covers them. Delicate and fragile, they feel alien to the world around you, out of place somehow.
There is some sarcasm mixed in sometimes due to the nature of the game's dialogue and Harry's obliviousness to everything going on around him. He also does pull a subtle twist on it for a lot of the skills, though it's not easy to notice sometimes. Otherwise, he tries to make it as clear as possible. He just needs to relay the message to you and let you interpret it instead. The deep voice also greatly contrasts with the chaotic environment of Disco Elysium. It would have been so overwhelming otherwise. If anything, we all know that you can't just put a little more character into a performance. You're gonna want to do it perfectly for every single line of the 350,000 word narration script. I know that good things take time, but they should still come out eventually, and I doubt it ever would have that way. About the Final Cut voicing overall, yes, there are some downgrades, but they're not as many as the improvements, and not as much of a downgrade as those improvements are, well, improved. And the inarguably most important part of it all was the writing. The highlight of my immersion was during the field autopsy of the corpse, where my mind started playing tricks on me and I actually thought I was smelling something after reading about black purge liquid and rotten genitals for half a fucking hour. Disco Elysium's writing is easily the best in any game I've ever seen, and also rivals my favorite books. I can't wait for the English translation of the lead writer's 2013 novel Sacred and Terrible Air, which is also set in the world of Elysium. Back to Disco, the writing is a merge of incredibly poetic, complicated phrasing and short and shameless jokes. For example, I'll live in a dumpster, I don't care, fuck everything, Hobocop. This line just cracks me up every single time I see it. It's so meta, it's literally identical to those fuck it, insert some ridiculous wordplay or whatever, you know what I mean. I love the fact that this belongs in the same game alongside this, yet it works perfectly. The quick jokes and comments are the icing on the cake. We get one so often after all the long complex paragraphs. And your dialogue options are structured much the same way. I'm insinuating that I'm vaguely sympathetic. I think I'm sort of pulling it off too, in a sad has-been kind of way. There is some charm to it. It's an expression of pain. This is not to say that the game doesn't manage to be both really hilarious and poetic in the same sentences. The Time Before You Wake Up, the prologue, is my favorite example of that. And the writing quality is incredibly consistent. I don't think there was a single line of dialogue I didn't enjoy greatly, in a game with nothing but writing, mind you. I obviously can't comment on all the moments or parts of the game unless we want to be here all day, but I'd like to share the ones that stood out for me in chronological order. These are not just the good moments of the game, mind you, these are the best of the best. I sometimes rewatch them on YouTube kind of moments. Firstly, a rather minor one, discovering Fortress Accident's Welkin role-playing game radio project, whatever it is. It was basically too ambitious for a small team and they eventually ran out of money and abandoned the whole thing. I'll leave it up to you on whether this parallel is intentional or not, but it obviously is. I think it mirrors our game perfectly. The world of Disco Elysium is unbelievably massive and I'll speak about it in depth later, trust me. For now, my point is Disco Elysium could have felt much the same. Zaum is a small studio and Disco Elysium is a big project. It could have never seen the light of day, just like the fictional Welkin project. It's such an obvious yet unfortunate realization. The second thought that came to my mind was, I'm enjoying the hell out of this masterpiece of a game, but just how many that never made it could have been just as good. You get out of this abandoned place in 20 minutes tops, by the way, but it's a great moment. When you come back later, as I said, and know the password, you get a great joke about ambition. This is the number of possible appearances of a player companion in the fictional game, again mirroring Disco Elysium's great number of choices. It is sadly the only joke in the game I think is executed poorly. It runs a little too long and becomes annoying to just click continue. I guess it at least proved to me that I didn't have a giant bias to find any and everything in this game funny. Secondly, the dream you have at the end of your first day. The soundtrack is one of my favorites in the game, but more importantly, it works so well with the content of your conversation. You speak with the hand corpse in the backyard, who's been replaced by you. You've hung yourself with your tie, just like you tried to in reality but failed. And that's what you talk about, or rather get shit on by your cops for, your failure. The game started taking things rather seriously by now, but this is the first time you'll grasp the entire scope of your failure, and it's all delivered by the reptilian brain and limbic system voices, or rather in this context, bad cop and, well, condescending cop. The delivery of these lines in particular was perfect.
Tell me, where are your friends? Human beings have friends, Harry boy. Where the hell are yours? You really dropped the ball, Harry. 4.6 billion people, and you failed every single one of them. You really fucked up.
These two really made me embarrassed, but this one was my favorite.
You're not coming back from shit. Thrashing around in that high conductivity state of yours, bumping into things and acting like a clown? Who are you kidding?
This is just too much. At the end of my first day I realized that, yeah, I probably look like a complete fucking asshole, bumping into things, constantly bothering people, embarrassing the hell out of Kim and wasting his time. I'm kind of a dick. But after day 2 is when you can find the smallest church in St. Sans tape, which is the only thing you need to tear shit up back at the cafeteria. The karaoke moment has become a pretty hyped up one by now, especially since you get the quest for it in the first half hour of the game, but when you finally convince God and start performing, it's just sad.
I would often go there, to the tiny church there. The smallest church in Saint-San, though it once was larger.
And there are nuances to it that can make it even sadder. For example, you might decide to do it later in the night, since singing karaoke during the day seems like, well, the most depressing thing ever, but depending on just how late you go, there might be no one there. And then we have the dialogue options after, like, I don't care that no one's here, or if Kim isn't, I dedicate this song to my friend Kim, even though he isn't here right now. I like that version without Kim a lot, basically just you and Garth at 2 AM, so he lets you sing now so as to cause the least amount of catastrophic catastrophic damage to the guests, and yet he ends up actually liking it. That's another obvious one. The song is amazing. I love the choice to obstruct Harry's voice by using the ancient reptilian brain instead. By now, the players have attached their own voice to him or none at all. Either way, it'd feel very weird to break that so late. And I like that if you fail, you might end up preferring that version instead.
I would often go there to the tiny church there.
It's a completely different approach, sang by the limbic system, and yet just as good, more David Bowie-esque rather than Leonard Cohen. And what is one of the most wholesome and definitely most surprising moments in the game, Kim actually liked it. No, really, he isn't saying it to cheer you up due to the lack of enthusiasm in the crowd, he really likes it. And what is ironically one of my favorite moments in all of gaming, the dancing scene. You're sitting in an abandoned Church of Dolores Day, which you turned into a club you likely named Disco Elysium. You, Andre and Kim are standing in the middle of it all and you decide to dance. Why not? By passing the white composure check, there is no turning back. You're in the deepest recesses of your mind, your ancient reptilian brain. Limbic system is also here, and so is the spinal cord, who has one of the best voices in the entire game.
Every vertebrae in your spine is an unformed skull ready to pop up and replace the old one.
More importantly though, this spinal cord is about to bust a move.
You have become a flawless interlocking mechanism, a flesh and bone approximation of the throb coming from the speaker setup of the one called Eggheads, entirely, rigidly imbecilic, without pity or fear.
The beat drops exactly as the narrator ends his line, and you won't click continue. You can't. You just keep watching. As you eventually do, the speed freaks all join in. The girls obviously refuse, but there is one person left, one who's in no position to refuse. The brief conversation you have with Kim is simply hilarious. He sounds only half serious, otherwise trying to hide his amusement. But then you get the red check, and if you pass it, you get to pull rank on him. This is the one time you can take advantage of that authority without becoming a jerk, and thus you two, who are literally cops mind you, get to, in Kim's case, be the most badass you ever get, and in Harry's case, order Kim to dance and feel like the most powerful person in the world. On the fucking dance floor. You are having the hardest yet most odd party ever, and no one but a bunch of outcasts knows about it, save for Kim, who'll still be too ashamed to speak about it ever anyway. Afterwards you black out, speak with the City of Evershow herself, and finally wake up, as one does, of course. The end of the single coolest moment in the game. But it can also have terrible consequences if you fail the Kim authority check, and that's in part what makes it so cool. It's one of the worst checks you can fail. I won't blame anyone if they reloaded immediately afterwards, though I'd still advise against it. You see, you call Kim a racial slur. Well, actually, it's not that bad. You can still say you didn't mean it in that way. Oh, okay, never mind. It's completely transparent now. Shit. So Kim storms out and then confronts you when you exit. You can apologize but still come out the asshole for the time being, no matter what you say. You can also refuse to own up to your actions, which causes Kim to not trust you during the tribunal and also calls you a racist in the final scene. Speaking of the tribunal, it's the closest the game ever gets to combat. It's way shorter than I remember it, and I think that's a good sign. It's very stressful, makes you hesitate clicking the continue button. Kim saying shit in the beginning is the only time I remember him cursing. It really paints the scene's seriousness. It all takes place on the one street you've been seeing the most of during your time, and it makes it incredibly uncanny. That is defending you, guard on the balcony, the amazing music in the background, it's all so great. And then you get shot and Kim almost gets shot or straight up gets shot. After which ensues the aftermath of the tribunal, waking up in the now cleaned room with Kim or Kuno, and them explaining how the streets of Martinez will be emptier for a while. I thought it was so... You know what, I actually can't say what it was like. It wasn't sad, it wasn't mysterious, it wasn't beautiful, it wasn't anything really special, it just seemed normal. It makes you go, well, what do we do now? In my playthrough, Glacia had left, Ruby had left, Joyce had left, the harbor was closed, the mercenaries were all dead, and 3 people were left in the Hardy Boys. Pertaining to the deaths, that's actually the best outcome you can get, yet the town felt so empty. Harry and Kim were both hurt and tired. Everything was so weird, with Titus and Garth being incredibly friendly towards you. The moment where the three of you are just nodding your heads together and Garth acting like a badass was hilarious though. But that quickly passes, you realize that the only real lead you've got left is the island. So you decide to at least visit that, rule it off the list, and probably throw the case into the archives. The drawn out boat ride you go on is so damn beautiful. You blast Sad FM on the boombox, naturally, and the song that plays is pretty much a compilation of other songs of the soundtrack. It's fitting you go down memory lane, and not just you, Harry and Kim too are probably recalling the whole investigation. How did it all lead us here? How do we have so little left to go off of? And that works greatly with the fact that the song sounds like an epilogue one. It seems like it's all over, yet when the song fades, you step foot on the island nonetheless. It feels so off in a way, I can't put it into words. This island seems so unimportant. But there you meet the deserter. It quickly becomes clear that he was the killer, and you still spend the next hour and a half probing the details and motives out of him. You speak about so many things that I have almost nothing to say about any of them. All of it is honestly so underwhelming, but it works. For three reasons, especially the last. First of all, it really sets in stone the theme of the whole game, that one idea it's been bringing up the whole time. The past. The communist revolution, which is important to so many of the characters, including this one, the times of disco and the expression, related to a fewer of them but still some, and the personal turmoil of Harry. The thing it's trying to say about it through this character is, let go. Nothing good ever comes of clinging to the horrible past. Just look what happened to this guy. Do you, Harry, want to be like him? Secondly, while I love the big twists and reveals of mysteries, I also like the approach of it's some dumb guy that decided to do something dumb because he failed at life. It's what a lot of murders are in the real world. There is no grand conspiracy, most of the time anyway. Oh, and the third reason. This is, for me, the most beautiful moment in the entire game. Just when you thought everything would have ended anticlimactically, you get the first and last purely fantastical moment of the game. Yes, you discover everything about the Pale and such, but no one in this world of Elysium opposes the existence of the Pale. This is something else entirely, a fully out of this and that world experience. And it's all so perfect. A gentle piano has been added to the usual music that plays on the island, and it makes it sound much more emotional, though I will add that it should loop faster and play throughout the whole thing, instead of leaving huge intervals with no background music at all. The Phasmid goes on to explain how the so-called mind-controlling effect it has, which is otherwise used on dangerous beings so it can avoid them, is not good to be exposed to for a long time. Yet that's exactly what's happening to the deserter. And I love how at first Harry thinks he's finally gone mad, after all the crazy things he's experienced in the past few days, talking to his brain, limbs, spine and various human skills, seeing the light around the rich man bend and break the laws of physics, and on top of that literally speaking to the city of Revachol herself. Harry is fucking insane, so it would have been very easy to leave it up to interpretation. Maybe only he can see it, maybe he's hallucinating, who knows. But then Kim puts his hand on your back, pulling you out of your grief for a second and says 4 simple words.
I can see it.
Afterwards proceeds that rather short yet extremely beautiful and memorable conversation with the Phasmid. The lines just keep coming back to my mind whenever I hear the music. Who cares what they think, Kim? I exist, and I exist too. Tell me what it's like for you, I'm ill. And then the lines after, my body aches, or I'm ill in my head, in my heart. The simplest and most emotional interaction you've had with another being so far. The Phasmid goes on to explain how it isn't anything crazy, it's just a simple stick insect with simple senses consisting of half-lit images. We are the truly insane, the humans. We are the origin of the Pale, it's the manifestation of all our complex pain and suffering. No simple creatures before us remember it, because it wasn't there. Our complicated thoughts and emotions brought it into the world. And Harry can say, I'm glad to be me, an incredibly sensitive instrument. No matter how easily he's affected by misfortune and just how much he's been hurt by others and himself. And the last line, of all the creatures I've met, you are the kindest, scariest, most beautiful. Oh, and of course, what are probably the 5 most empowering words in the whole 1,000,000 word script.
In honor of your shit, Lieutenant Ephraiteur, which you kept together in the face of total unrelenting terror, day after day, second by second. Detective arriving on the scene.
There are but two things to criticize about this moment, and it's not even related to the scene itself. Rather, firstly, the fact that you can't pass the check if you don't spray the pheromones. I know that it's supposed to be like, oh, you just didn't have faith in the cryptozoologists, but come on. This was never some kind of foreshadowed thing. It could have been so easy to not spray the pheromones. This wasn't one of the big choices in the game that you thought a lot about. I would have been big mad if I ended up missing out on this scene. In fact, I didn't remember that you had to do that on my second playthrough, and I also roleplayed as a Harry that goofs off in serious situations, yet takes his beliefs very seriously. He always goes hard with the real discussions and ragdoll play sounds for believing in curses. Thank God I read that you had to spray it before I would have gotten to that, or I definitely wouldn't have. Either way, they should have had Morel sprayed on without asking and then have the option to make him lay it on again. Thick. Secondly, this is an incredibly important check, probably the most important one in the game for me, without any substitute if you failed it at all. This is the one row I talked about earlier that you should save scum every time. It's not like, oh, I got Kim shot but now I get to ride with Kuno, but rather, alright, I failed this check, that's it, no best moment in the game for me, I guess. And it's such a bad one to miss too, since it might seem too insignificant for you to reload. The first check, I mean, and there are others to fail. And finally, the, well, final scene of the game. I loved listing all my great achievements and getting frustratingly praised by my fellow officers, and also the more ridiculous ones that Kim had to verify. It's the true last trip down memory lane. Now, I've seen some people say that they hated this ending, that they would have liked something with more closure. Everything somehow connecting as a complicated detective case should, or even just the whole game ending back on that island, since there's something just off with this last moment. While I don't hate it as much as I did at first, I'll still agree that there is something missing, just a little something. I don't expect them to just simply accept Harry like that, as if nothing ever happened. And yet that factor kind of gives it a certain attribute I really like. You see, in between my two playthroughs of Disco Elysium, I've experienced some other fictional stories that I can't find a better word for other than passing. I have some trouble describing the said concept, but I'll try my best. Some more great examples could be the movie Reservoir Dogs by Quentin Tarantino, or No Country for Old Men by the Coen brothers. It's not hard to see how similar they are to Disco Elysium. They seem like a short series of events that happen in their respective worlds, events that kind of seem insignificant in a way, and that's part of the appeal, I guess. Many similar ridiculous stories could have happened in our world, but we wouldn't know about them. I think the murder reveal also kind of contributed to this feeling in a way. I'm not really convinced this explanation was enough to formulate for people who somehow haven't experienced it, since the description seems to fall in line with other stories that don't cause the same feeling for me. A movie like The Lighthouse, for example, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I'd love to give it this attribute, and it seems like it should fall right in there next to them, but it doesn't for me. More about the final scene, you can also choose to persuade Kim into maybe thinking about joining Precinct 41, or in other words, it's decided. You can also recruit Kuno if he's there with you, that is. Him taking the lead in this scene and protecting you in his own weird way was wholesome too. Or on the other side, Kim doing the same after having bought into all your madness by this point. And of course, the final scene with the music and all is perfect in every way. As long as it doesn't bug out. That's probably the worst time ever for a game to do this. Oh, and some people apparently thought the game was too short, they expected there to be more after solving the murder, and that honestly seems like a complete joke to me. The game is so incredibly dense, I can't even begin to fathom how it could have been 2 times longer, as some say. The script is 1 million words, it's like 15 novels, and not just in length, literally too, the writing is novel quality. Come on people. Something that's not really a criticism but rather a fun idea, why don't we have a short scene of Harry picking up the light at the pawn shop if you've bought it? And something a little more serious, having a short conversation with Lena and Morel about the Phasmid if you somehow track them down. I'm sure they could have made it work, it would have been a great epilogue in my opinion and might have appealed to those who really hate the ending as it is right now. More about the comedy. Disco Elysium is easily the most hilarious game I've ever played, and one of the funniest pieces of fiction I've ever seen in general. Nothing has made me laugh out loud more than a couple of times an hour in recent memory, besides Borat, yet Disco Elysium managed to do it every other minute. I Want to Have Fuck With You, Inexplicable Feminist Agenda, The Unsolvable Case, and so on. Why are these all in the first 2 hours of the game, you may ask? Because that's how long I went before realizing I'm literally gonna have to write down a third of the script. It'll be easier to write down the bad humor instead. So here we go, the number scene, and just a little bit. Okay, that's it. Continuing, a big part of this comedy is very, how do I say this? Yes, I'll have to use that word. Memey. Never mind, let's call it meta humor. I mean, one of the freaking animators of Zaum made this damn animation. It's a parody of Casey Frey's video Get the Fuck Out My Way type way, and Casey Frey's humor is very random equals funny-esque. I'm not saying I don't find the video hilarious, rather the opposite, but it's probably not a video that most people you show it to would find anything other than stupid. You could even say the game is about the comedy as much as anything else, yet it's important to distinguish that it isn't just about the comedy. And I'll be damned if Disco Elysium doesn't have some of the best world building I've ever seen. It isn't anything out of this world, and I think that helps on getting people more engaged in the politics of it all. In fact, in the beginning it pretty much seems like an alternative reality, a what-if situation, but then we slowly start discovering some weird stuff. I don't think that's how computers are supposed to work. Wait, what is the Pale? Hold on, cryptids are real? It makes you feel all the more like Harry. You can't quite figure out what's real and not, and you're just as shocked as him when you find out it is. It keeps you guessing all the time. That's why I thought the cryptid reveal was so impactful. And the game has so much of what is essentially exposition. It'll make any author scream in horror before they realize just how good the writing is and how interesting the actual world building ends up being. They can get away with it. It does feel like a history lecture when Joyce is giving me a lowdown on reality, but it's a history lecture I want to take, mostly because we see such an insignificant piece of the world otherwise. We're in a small part of Revachol, which is a small part of the island of Caillou, which is just one of the islands of Insulinde, which is one of the 7 separate inhabitable areas in the world of the Pale, and yet it's all so fascinating. It keeps you wanting more. Having the orbs to click on also helps, it just works for my monkey brain. I want to click all of them and get them out of my screen, all the little circly thingies that give me insight into the world. Disco Elysium's approach very much reminds me of Game of Thrones. Firstly, as in showing a smaller part of a big world. If you've read The World of Ice and Fire, which shows the absolute scale of Game of Thrones' world, or even watched the YouTube videos summarizing it for that matter, you know what I'm talking about. And secondly, pertaining to the realism part of the deal. Both of them have fewer fantastical elements that create this great sense of mystery when it comes to the magic. Another thing which I loved were the names of cities, countries, establishments and so on. They clearly went all out. And the setting's melancholy really reminds me of rundown Soviet-era block housing neighborhoods. Jesus, that was a mouthful. Which might be natural seeing as the developers are Estonians. As a parting note, Disco Elysium actually got me really interested into writing and world building, and it's far from the first fictional story I've experienced. And if that doesn't count for something, then I don't know what does. And I have to give credit where credit is absolutely due. Let's talk a little about Disco Elysium's soundtrack. The music by British Sea Power is some of the best in any game I've ever seen. I'll have a ton of trouble ranking my favorites, seeing as they all fall in vastly different genres, but let's just say that my top 3 favorites are Dark Souls 3, The Witcher 3, and now Disco Elysium. And the reason I've avoided talking about the music as a whole thus far is because I had to remind you of, or introduce you to, my favorite moments in the game in order to make that point. Disco Elysium soundtrack, much like the other 2 games I mentioned, plays a giant part in somewhat making the greatest parts of the game. Such as a lot of media does, naturally. I mean, how many truly sad scenes do you know that don't have sad music? But here it's a little more than that. The music is not a necessity, it's so important at times the game almost seems like a vessel for it, in a way. The karaoke scene, I mean, it's a freaking karaoke scene. The dancing scene, in which the catchy Van Eyck jam inevitably dictates the whole atmosphere. And the boombox boat ride scene, wherein the only arguably important part is the music. We just sit back and let it express the emotion. And that's why you could argue the exact opposite too, that the game can only express the true vastness of these deep emotions by using music to directly relay the emotion to you. However, one of the songs stands out in particular. It's so perfectly fitting in this game, and yet anytime I try to pinpoint exactly why, I just get lost in it. I don't know how to formulate why it works as well as it does, why it completely embodies the whole tone of Revachol. Why do I feel that if I somehow heard it before playing the game, I still would have immediately thought the following: okay, this is a poor yet beautiful town where everyone has some kind of sad story to tell, kind of dystopian, there's an ocean too, of course. I can't imagine this song working for any other time and place, and I can't think of a single different song that would have worked as well for Revachol. And in truth, this goes for every single song in the soundtrack, and that's actually really weird because a bunch of them were remixed versions of very old songs from British Sea Power, including the one we were just talking about. That's in part why I said the game seems like a vessel for it. In any case, the music is amazing and a perfect fit for the world of Elysium. Every time I go back to listen to the soundtrack, and that's very often, the commonly paired with the music voices, ambience and visuals immediately start swarming in my head. I hear Garth and Titus's passive-aggressive remarks, Play sounds as distant complaining about curses, the old lady's sweeping, Roy's calm tone and hypnotizing warm lights, Joyce's voice along with the waves and her grand boat. You get it. Finally, let's talk a little about the fun stuff. Disco Elysium is obviously a very political game. Not political as in it disregards the status quo by having a female homosexual main character, which we all know is what clearly dictates whether a piece of fiction is political or not. It's actually brimming with political commentary and humor. Racist mug, feminist agenda, homosexual underground, your political affiliation, talking to Rene and Gaston about communism and centrism, racist lorry driver, Measurehead, Gary the crypto-fascist, and so many other less and more obvious examples. Thus, the game has caught slack by some people for having a bias. Considering the developers of the game are leftists, I think they did an amazing job at staying neutral where they could. They do have a bias when it comes to facts though, they never lie to you about reality, which is what some people perceive as having a bias, but only because they don't have their facts straight. Speaking of social politics, you can still be racist and sexist if you want, though bear in mind that the game pulls no punches when it comes to rightfully labeling you racist and sexist. I thought that would have been pretty obvious, but some don't like it apparently. When it comes to forms of government though, they keep it pretty fair, as in mostly unfair for everybody. Each side's representatives are all lunatics to a degree, though you might even say that they went overboard for the leftists in particular, intentionally in fact, since they feared they'd have a bias otherwise. A piece of advice: you really shouldn't find yourself saying stuff such as, okay, I'm completely for X ideology, but these guys in Disco Elysium seem to be going a little too hard on the X, it just over-exaggerated, come on! Listen motherfucker, everyone gets strawmanned here, it's not just you. For real though, you're not gonna have a good time if you think like this. In fact, if you're not really into politics but can just somehow grasp the concepts that are being discussed, you might even have a better time than most affiliated people, in some ways at least. You won't get the more subtle commentary, but you'll enjoy the bashing of every side. And if you're into politics and can enjoy the game making fun of everyone with strong opinions, whilst also realizing that it doesn't spread any misinformation, you'll probably have an amazing time. However, the game does sometimes label you something you could argue you shouldn't be. For example, this line. It sounds to me more like I'm explaining what the rags are supposed to represent to a communist using simple logic, and not that I'm necessarily a communist myself or agree with the message. And yet it gives you +1 on the communist meter, and this is not the only example of this happening. By the way, these used to be just for keeping track and giving you some thoughts which you could discard if you wanted, but now there's a quest you get depending on which side you are, so it definitely matters. And I see how you could argue that it works on how people perceive you, not how you perceive yourself. It does make sense that it doesn't really matter if you're racist inside your head, but you never act on it and treat everyone equally just for your own benefit. Just like it doesn't matter if you're truly kind-hearted, yet also get ironically racist from time to time, appearing actually racist and reinforcing people's beliefs. But in this case in particular, I don't think you're actually making any political statements, so yeah. The game also gives you little context on the politics of the world around you at times, yet demands your thought-out position on the various events or people. I guess it makes sense with Harry's amnesia, but I would have appreciated if you could at least ask for some extra information. In conclusion, Disco Elysium The Final Cut is easily one of the best and most memorable games I've ever played. Also one of the most abstract ones, if that makes any sense. In a way, it's why it took me so long to make this video. The game makes me feel stuff that I haven't felt in any other game ever and are incredibly hard to wrap your head around. Specifically why you experience them. And that is, after all, what I need to do for each review. And I think that's a clear sign that something is More than your average great story even. It makes it feel downright spiritual in some ways. I love Disco Elysium because Disco Elysium is so amazing in every single way and screw explaining it. And I'm gonna give Disco Elysium the final cut a mid 10 out of 10. And that was it for this in-depth look into Disco Elysium. Welcome back to the longer videos. Make sure to ring the bell, share, like, comment, watch my other videos and all that good stuff. And check out my rating list if you're interested. I also keep all my video ideas and what I'm currently working on there. It's linked on my channel. And as always, subscribe if you like this type of content and want to see more of it. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next video.